You arrive just seconds before it begins. The streets of Tokyo shimmer under the dull haze of morning drizzle, the kind of rain that feels almost clean. People move as they always have, heads down, feet quick, breath rising in faint clouds that disappear too fast to be remembered. You're standing there, blending in, dressed like them, pretending to be one of them. But unlike them, you know what's about to happen. You know this breath you just took could be the last clean one you will ever have. You have landed on the eve of extinction. It doesn't start with panic. It never does. The first cough does not echo like thunder or scream like alarm. It is soft, a tired grunt from a researcher with blurry eyes exiting the Sumida Biocontainment Institute. He does not know that he has inhaled something that should never have existed, something the human immune system cannot recognize, a mutated prion once confined to the innards of lab rats, now airborne, invisible, riding particles of humidity and skin and dust. You watch as he boards the train, touches a railing, sneezes into the air. Around him, people shift slightly, annoyed, unaware they have been marked for death. You step back, heart pounding, already knowing you are too late to stop what is coming. By the time the train pulls into the next station, everyone inside has inhaled a future they will never live to see. A future where cancer no longer waits inside your body, growing silently. It attacks instantly. It spreads like a virus, and it's in the air you breathe. Now, you must hold your breath, not just literally, but figuratively, because what you are about to witness is the fastest, cruelest collapse of human civilization. Not from war, not from nuclear fire, not from machines turning against their creators, but from the betrayal of the very act that gives you life, breathing. Welcome to the year 2029. Welcome to the outbreak of airborne cancer. And here is exactly why you will not survive it. To understand your fate, you must go back to where it all began. Not with war or terrorism, but with one microscopic mistake. It started, as extinction events often do, with good intentions and brilliant minds. In the late 2020s, scientists were racing to solve a new class of cancers, those caused by chronic exposure to microplastics and atmospheric toxins. Global cancer rates had spiked, with aggressive tumors forming even in children. In a desperate bid to cure what they could not control, researchers began to reprogram prions. Those twisted proteins, once linked only to diseases like mad cow, as delivery vehicles for anti-cancer therapy. Prions, they believed, could be modified to seek out and destroy early-stage cancer cells before tumors ever formed. They were right about the seeking part, but not about the destroying. One lab in Tokyo, heralded as the cutting edge of biotech, was running quiet trials in a level 4 containment facility. Their prion prototype, designated P41, was designed to bond with a specific protein found in aggressive tumors. What they didn't anticipate was P41's uncanny ability to survive airborne suspension. Once it left the lab through a flawed ventilation protocol during an electrical outage, it latched onto moisture droplets, microfibers in the air, and even oxygen molecules. It no longer needed blood contact or tissue transfer. It just needed you to breathe. Within 24 hours, the first internal alarms went off. Not because people were dying, but because they weren't. Not yet. Patients across Tokyo began arriving at hospitals with unexplainable cellular abnormalities, internal swelling, microtumors forming in their throats, lungs, and brains. Surgeons could see the cancer growing in real time during operations, multiplying with every breath the patient took. By day 2, the death toll had reached 7,000. By day 5, 1.8 million. The terrifying truth became clear. P41 was not just a cancer. It was cancer turned predator. It entered through the airways and reprogrammed the body's own cells to accelerate growth without boundaries. Your skin, your lungs, your stomach lining, even your tears became breeding grounds. Inhaling P41 was not like catching a cold. It was like swallowing an entire malignant lifetime in a single breath. You, the observer from another time, arrived right at the inflection point. The moment between science and horror, between normalcy and extinction. Your mission was to study, to document, maybe even to warn. But now, standing here without your filtration gear, surrounded by 1,000 living time bombs, you realize something devastating. You were never immune. Even time travelers cannot escape biology. You to breathe, and that breath, right now, may already be rewriting your future in mutated strands of DNA. And no one, not even you, will survive what comes next. To witness the true beginning of the end, we must go back to the first human who unknowingly carried the airborne death, Patient 0. The moment is deceptively ordinary. It is April 17th, 2029, a humid Wednesday in Tokyo. You land in the alley behind Sumida Biocontainment Institute at 6:03 a.m. You calibrate your internal chronometer, double-checking coordinates. You are on time. This is the precise hour when the chain reaction begins. You take shelter behind a rusted supply crate as the building's rear service door hisses open. A man emerges. He is thin, early 40s, slouched, clutching a steaming can of vending machine coffee. His ID badge flickers briefly in the light. Dr. Yuki Hanazawa, a lead researcher on P41. His face is pale, his eyes rimmed red from sleepless nights inside the lab. You can see the exhaustion in the way he drags his steps toward the subway entrance across the street. The rain beads on his lab coat, soaking in slowly, but he does not rush. He does not even look up. As he passes, he coughs, a dry, shallow rasp, no more noticeable than a yawn. But you know what that cough really is. What Dr. Hanazawa does not realize is that P41 has already colonized the soft membranes of his throat. During the previous night's blackout, containment seals failed for 3 minutes. The exposure was brief. He wore gloves. He thought he was safe. He was not. What he inhaled was not simply a failed gene therapy prototype. It was an evolved prion with the ability to replicate using ambient proteins and airborne lipids. What he inhaled is now replicating with each breath. And when he coughed just now, billions of microscopic killers entered the air. You remain still, holding your breath out of instinct. You can almost see them, the shimmer of particles rising and swirling, riding the breeze from the train vent across the street. A woman with a sleeping baby brushes past him. A salaryman on his phone stops to light a cigarette near the entrance. Each of them walks straight through the invisible cloud. Each of them inhales. Patient 0 has already become Patient 25. You follow him, staying 10 paces back. Inside the station, the chaos of Tokyo morning rush has not yet begun. It is early enough that the crowd is thin but steady. Hanazawa boards the inbound Ginza line. You do not follow him onto the train. You already know how it ends. That car, in just 30 minutes, will become the point of no return. The filtered air will recirculate the mutated proteins until every passenger becomes a host. They will all step off at different stops, heading to offices, restaurants, universities, hospitals. Every single one will share their breath, and the world will not feel the impact for another 48 hours. You look down the stairs as the train doors seal. The conductor does not know he is driving a biological weapon. The fluorescent lights above flicker as the train departs, disappearing into the dark tunnel with a low whine and a soft metallic sigh. The moment is so gentle, so subtle, that not even history will mark it as the beginning, but it is. Within 2 hours, Dr. Hanazawa will begin to feel pressure behind his eyes. He will assume it is stress or another migraine. At 11:32 a.m., during a departmental briefing, he will excuse himself to the bathroom, where he will vomit a clot of blood and tissue into the sink. By the time emergency services arrive, his throat will have swollen shut. He will be dead by noon. The autopsy will reveal something unprecedented. His esophagus, lungs, and portions of his trachea will be riddled with new growths, cancerous clusters so dense they fused like concrete. Medical staff will be confused. They will isolate the body, but not the people who treated him. They will wear basic PPE, unaware that what killed him is not bacterial, not viral, not fungal. It is molecular warfare through mutation. There is no immune response, no inflammation. A school bus door closes after taking on 20 children. A cyclist stops to adjust her mask, unaware it has trapped the particles inside. A security guard sneezes and wipes his nose, then hands a brochure to a passerby. By sunset, over 400,000 people will carry P41 unknowingly. Containment became mathematically impossible. Others will say that if the train had been stopped, or if Dr. Hanazawa had stayed home, or if Tokyo's filters had been recalibrated, the catastrophe could have been mitigated. These arguments are meaningless. The truth is simpler, colder. P41 was not a virus. It did not mutate like one. It was not even technically alive. It was engineered protein with a simple instruction: multiply using the body's own machinery. No fever, no immune response, no visible symptoms until it was too late. You could be dead within 48 hours of exposure. Your lungs transformed into hard, fibrous mass, unable to expand, unable to take in even one more breath. From your vantage point, as an observer outside of time, you document, you record, and you remain horrified, because now you understand what future historians never will. It died in silence, in unseen clouds, in shared spaces, in polite coughs, in warm rooms filled with strangers breathing the same invisible doom. You begin to retreat toward the checkpoint where you can safely return to the temporal gate. But something gnaws at your chest. You reach up and press your hand against your sternum. Is it panic or pressure? A tightness coils in your ribs. Is it the air? You had only held your breath for a minute, maybe less. Could it already be enough? You open your portable scanner and run a diagnostic. The screen lights up red. Foreign protein activity. Present cell division accelerated. You freeze. You, too, are now part of the outbreak. The time travel suit was designed for viruses, radiation, even biological warfare, but not for this, not for a weapon that was never meant to exist. Your breath, like everyone else's, has been betrayed. You look out over the skyline of Tokyo, its towers glittering in early morning gold, as thousands of people begin their final days without knowing it. The world around you is still moving, still breathing, but the countdown has already begun. The real nightmare begins not with death, but with denial. Now, we descend into a city that refuses to believe what is killing it. At first, no one connects the dots. Some feel completely fine until they suddenly collapse, gasping, their lungs filling not with fluid, but with flesh. Doctors believe they are dealing with an environmental toxin or a new influenza strain. They run tests. Nothing matches. No virus, no bacteria, no known chemical agents. White blood cell counts remain normal. There is no fever, no cough, no sore throat, at least not in any traditional sense. Instead, radiologists begin noticing something else. CT scans show dense masses forming in the lungs and throat, solid, aggressive tumors that seem to appear in less than 24 hours. In many cases, patients are already too far gone before the first diagnosis is even written down. From your position embedded in Seoul, you watch the first denial take shape like a theater script. Local health authorities downplay the reports. They blame seasonal pollution, stress-induced anxiety, faulty diagnostic equipment. As you walk through downtown Gwanghwamun, wearing your temporal observer's visor, you see the signs of the storm brewing beneath the surface. An unusually high number of people are winded after short walks. A man vomits into a planter and collapses. 2 teenagers on scooters crash into a pole, both suddenly disoriented, unable to keep their balance. They laugh it off, but one of them has blood at the corners of his mouth. The hospitals begin to swell. Triage lines snake down sidewalks, wrapping around buildings like winding rivers of quiet desperation. Patients sit silently with oxygen masks pressed to their faces, unaware the very air they are breathing is feeding their tumors. In one hospital, a nurse begins to notice that several patients who shared a waiting room are developing nearly identical tumors in the same locations: trachea, lymph nodes, upper lungs. It is a pattern too precise to ignore. That nurse, her name is Kiko Tanabe, will become one of the earliest whistleblowers. It's replicative. It's like the air itself is turning people into cancer factories. The message is sent. It will be read too late. 2 hours later, she collapses beside the ICU bed of a boy she was treating. Her own CT scan reveals full organ involvement. Within 10 days of Patient Zero's train ride, 18 cities across Asia report a strange uptick in spontaneous high-speed tumors. Medical networks struggle to compare notes. No one has time. The deaths come so fast and so frequently that it becomes impossible to keep count. Entire cancer wards are converted into containment zones. But containment is impossible when the pathogen does not need contact, or blood, or fluid. It travels in breath, clings to skin, rides in hair and clothing, and most chilling of all, lives on oxygen itself. The first mass collapse event occurs in a Singapore transit station. Security footage, which you later watch from a high-level observatory room, shows a crowd of 180 people packed tightly on an underground platform. One man keels over, another falls. A third begins vomiting tissue and seizing violently. Within 6 minutes, 42 commuters are down. 14 die before ambulances arrive. Autopsies confirm a now familiar pattern. Lungs hardened like cement. Upper respiratory tracts lined with a thick, fibrous tumor network. Tracheal cartilage invaded and ruptured from within. The footage leaks. Panic sparks. But not everyone believes it. In America, major networks dismiss the footage as AI deepfake propaganda from foreign actors. In France, the deaths are attributed to black mold or e-cigarette complications. In Russia, the Kremlin blames Western bioweapons and bans all international flights. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands are already infected. The disease has no need for debate. It has no ideology. It is moving, replicating, adapting, thriving. You return briefly to New York. The air feels stale, heavy. Times Square is still crowded, filled with tourists and blinking ads, unaware they are breathing in their own destruction. On a bench in Bryant Park, a woman opens her laptop and plays the leaked footage from Singapore. A man next to her scoffs, saying it's all a hoax. She coughs twice into her sleeve, nodding slowly, but she does not move. She has already begun to feel the pressure in her chest. Hospitals in the United States begin seeing a surge in what they call rapid-onset carcinoma clusters. But the name is irrelevant. So is the language. So is the country. Within 3 weeks, the planet's largest cities all report identical patterns: collapsing patients, overwhelming tumors, an atmosphere seemingly turned into a weapon. And yet, the airports remain open. The governments keep trading. People still gather for concerts, flights, business summits. No one wants to admit what is happening because the truth means something unspeakable. The truth means no one is safe. Not inside a hazmat suit, not underground, not in a private jet. The air is everywhere, and it no longer belongs to you. You conduct a covert sweep at a Geneva research facility. Scientists here are among the first to declare that P41 may not be a traditional pathogen at all. One paper, never released to the public, describes it as a nanoscopic. In other words, it is not a life form, it is a mechanism, a machine made of meat. Worse still, it appears to be learning. When exposed to medical treatments like chemotherapy or radiation, it adapts. The tumors it creates become denser, more vascularized. Patients receiving anti-cancer therapies die faster, their tissues collapsing under the rapid growth. Immunotherapies only make it worse. White blood cells swarm the sites of infection, but instead of fighting it, they become assimilated, co-opted into the tumor growth. Human immunity is no longer your ally. It is now your enemy, turned traitor by a disease that rewrites biology itself. Meanwhile, the average time from exposure to fatal organ failure shrinks from 72 hours to just 30. Your return route to the time gate is blocked. Too many checkpoints, too many soldiers, too many bodies. In your temporary shelter, you activate your biomonitor again. There is swelling in your lymph nodes, an abnormality in your esophagus, and something in your saliva, something foreign. You know the pattern. It means your time is running out, but you stay, because history demands witnesses, and the plague is no longer invisible. It now shows itself in every city skyline dimmed by ash, every hospital parking lot filled with stretchers, every whisper of wind that carries a death sentence. The age of clean air is over, and the world is still pretending it has time to react. But hospitals will soon fall silent, not from lack of patients, but from the flood that no doctor can treat. What happens next is not medicine, but triage at the edge of civilization. You arrive at the intersection of panic and protocol. It is the 3rd week since patient 0 coughed, and Earth's medical institutions are in a slow-motion freefall. From your observation post, inside a sealed floor of Tokyo Medical Center, you watch trained professionals unravel, not from fear, but from exhaustion, despair, and the sudden irrelevance of everything they thought they knew. These are the last days of medicine, and no one inside realizes it yet. In one of the operating theaters, a surgeon named Dr. Haru Minamoto is attempting to excise a tumor from the airway of a teenage girl. She is still conscious, gagging under light sedation because anesthesia has become dangerous. Most patients die before they even go under. Haru's hands tremble, not from fatigue, but from helplessness. The tumor has grown back twice since they started the operation. Every time he cuts it away, more flesh blooms in its place, like ivy bursting from concrete. Eventually, he steps back, eyes wide. He removes his gloves and walks out, leaving the girl to die on the table. He does not cry. He just stares ahead, silent. A machine beeps 3 times and then flatlines. In the hall, nurses burn through their 36th consecutive hour on duty. Beds line every wall, every corridor. People lie on the floor, in surgical gowns and street clothes alike, clutching their throats, begging for air. There are no more ventilators. Oxygen tanks are padlocked and monitored by armed guards. 4 bags are shared between patients. Staff no longer ask for names. Charts are skipped entirely. They simply label patients in categories: green for mobile, yellow for partial function, red for terminal, and black for dead or dying. And the black category keeps growing. You step outside into the emergency triage zone, where the pavement has been sectioned with color-coded tarps. Patients are dropped by ambulance, wheelbarrow, or carried by family into their designated zones. The red zone is the most crowded, people screaming, convulsing, swelling. In one corner, a man holds his infant daughter, her tiny face consumed by a crimson tumor, eyes already lost. A medic shakes his head and walks away. The father screams until his voice tears. The doctors do not look up. The Hippocratic oath collapses under the weight of math. The new protocol is brutal. No treatment for anyone expected to die within 24 hours. That includes the elderly, children with aggressive tumors, and those showing signs of airway blockage. Instead of trying to save them, hospitals now isolate them into fenced areas with morphine drips and prayer speakers. Some have called these zones compassion corners. Others call them death pens. From Nairobi to New Delhi, from Sao Paulo to Stockholm, similar scenes unfold. Medical facilities cease to function as centers of healing and instead become factories of farewell. Governments broadcast new guidelines. Avoid hospitals unless symptoms are critical. But critical has lost its meaning. People collapse in the streets. Taxi drivers refuse passengers who cough. Corpses lie untouched on sidewalks, wrapped in plastic like meat, because the risk of exposure now outweighs the reverence of burial. And then the rumors begin that some countries have developed sealed cancer sanctuaries where the rich can live inside filtered domes, breathing sterilized air and monitored constantly for cell anomalies. You see one such compound in Dubai from afar, encased in mirrored panels and guarded by private security. Inside, billionaires drink from UV-sterilized crystal flutes, their children sealed inside oxygen suits that cost more than the GDP of small nations. When a child in the compound develops a minor tumor, a team of doctors is flown in from Zurich via vacuum-sealed aircraft. When that same team returns to Switzerland, they are denied re-entry. Their plane is redirected, and no one hears from them again. Meanwhile, outside the domes, black markets erupt. Clean air becomes the new currency. Portable canisters filled with industrial oxygen are sold for thousands of dollars. Filter masks that once cost pennies are now auctioned off in blood markets. Criminal cartels shift their entire empires toward air piracy. Armed gangs hijack hospital oxygen trucks and resell them to the dying at brutal prices. In Manila, two rival gangs launch a street war over a warehouse full of EPA filters. 17 people die, not from cancer, but from gunfire over the right to breathe. You witness one horrifying shift in San Francisco. An overwhelmed hospital creates a new division, not of oncology or emergency medicine, but of intake prioritization. It is manned not by doctors, but by soldiers. Armed guards now make the call of who enters and who dies outside the gates. One mother arrives with her son, whose throat has ballooned to the size of a melon. She is told there is no space. She begs, she threatens. Then she kneels and offers her only possession, her wedding ring. The soldier pauses. Then he hands her a mask, waves her through, and closes the gate in the face of another dozen waiting behind her. A new morality takes shape, crude and transactional. Doctors now triage based on usefulness. Engineers, pilots, scientists, and agricultural workers are placed higher in priority. Artists, the elderly, and the disabled are deprioritized. The slogan, "Save the Builders, not the Broken," appears on several international broadcasts, and then is quietly removed after global outrage. But the practice continues. Morality is a privilege the dying world can no longer afford. In the shadows, some doctors snap. One in Cairo poisons her entire ward and herself. She leaves a note, better quick than drowning in tumors. In Berlin, a hospital administrator falsifies all intake logs, giving treatment only to his family and friends. He is arrested by angry survivors and left to die in his own oxygen tent. In Mumbai, makeshift euthanasia clinics open, offering a peaceful sleep for those with no chance. The line stretches for 7 blocks. Volunteers in white coats hand out lollipops to children waiting with their families. You visit a facility in Rio de Janeiro where medics operate out of a converted soccer stadium. There are no walls, just endless cots arranged by expiration date. A child reads a book to his unconscious mother. A priest walks from row to row, blessing the dying with recycled incense. A woman sits beside her daughter's bed, whispering the same lullaby over and over. The staff has stopped giving medication. The supplies ran out days ago. All they offer now is sedation and the promise of no pain. You turn to leave, but are stopped by a medic who looks at you with bloodshot eyes. "You're breathing," he says. "That's all that matters now." He tosses you a used mask and walks away. Behind you, a woman screams. You don't turn around, because you already know what you'll see. Hospitals were the last defense, but with them gone, survival depends on something else entirely. Who controls the last clean air on Earth? The age of war for land, oil, and ideology ends. The new wars are for the right to breathe. From your elevated vantage point in the Alps, you watch as the clouds roll over Geneva, slow, majestic, and deadly. Below, a glistening dome stretches across the city's old center. A bubble of salvation built by the World Air Commission, a newly formed coalition of elite governments and corporate powers. The dome filters all incoming air, neutralizing P41 particles and recycling carbon dioxide through a molecular scrubbing system designed to outlive the human body itself. Inside are politicians, billionaires, scientists, and those deemed critical to the survival of strategic knowledge. Outside are the remaining citizens, pressing their faces against the translucent barrier, watching loved ones on the other side wave through glass, unable to speak without choking. The clean air dome is not alone. By the 4th month of the outbreak, at least 20 nations have constructed similar shelters. The United States builds 7 across the continent, each located in previously classified bunkers. China completes its first fully enclosed air fortress in the Kunlun Mountains. The United Arab Emirates converts its entire capital into a sealed system of atmospheric pods. Entry into these zones is regulated by biometric clearance, genetic screening, and often bribery. You watch in horror as refugees in Turkey, Brazil, and Nigeria riot outside half-completed domes, demanding access. Guards fire warning shots, then real shots. In Nairobi, thousands gather outside an oxygen dome run by a European pharmaceutical giant. A child inside the dome presses her palm against the wall. A child outside. They look at each other for a moment. Then the girl outside collapses. Her father pounds his fists against the wall until they bleed, but there is no response from the guards. You do not need sound to feel the rage in his scream. Governments fracture. The wealthiest secure air, the rest secure weapons. In Southeast Asia, a coalition of smaller nations launches a coordinated strike against a regional air purification plant in Australia. The attack is not for land, it is for atmospheric control. Satellite imagery reveals the terrifying strategy. Artificial wind tunnels are constructed to blow P-41 particles into rival airspace. Nations begin bombing forests to create smoke barriers, hoping to block contaminated wind from crossing borders. One country attempts to ignite the Himalayas to form a firewall, killing tens of thousands and failing completely. International alliances collapse. The United Nations relocates its operations to an undisclosed oxygen compound in Greenland. Its last meeting held by hologram, as no delegation dares travel physically. The Security Council no longer debates sanctions or diplomacy. Now, it debates airstrikes on cities where infected clouds gather. The phrase aerogenic warfare enters military doctrine for the first time in history. From your temporary encampment in Kazakhstan, you observe military convoys transporting mobile air filtration stations, massive, tank-sized machines designed to scrub the atmosphere of targeted zones. These machines are used to clear runways, to protect armored divisions, and, in one devastating case, to cleanse an entire presidential palace before evacuation. A private militia in South America hijacks a shipment of portable scrubbers and holds a town hostage, threatening to shut down their oxygen supply unless paid in gold and clean blood plasma. Global air travel is abolished, not for safety, but because every plane that crosses air boundaries is seen as an airborne vector. Several are shot down in the sky. One is intercepted mid-flight by drones and forced to land, where the passengers are executed by a frightened militia. Satellite data shows that airborne particles are now detectable in the jet stream. The cancer is riding the weather. You visit a desert installation in Nevada, where the United States Air Force has converted Area 51 into an airlock base. Here, fighter jets are not armed with missiles, but with aerosol cannons that spray temporary neutralizers across incoming air currents. It is a futile gesture. The neutralizers last minutes. The air is endless. One general tells you bluntly, "We are fighting a war against the atmosphere, and we are losing." In India and Pakistan, where dense populations accelerate spread, the line between defense and genocide blurs. Entire cities are bombed not to destroy enemies, but to vaporize contaminated populations and slow the atmospheric load. Nuclear weapons are contemplated, not for deterrence, but to force mass combustion of infected air columns. Cooler heads prevail, for now. Meanwhile, the black market thrives. You slip into a crowded alley in Rio de Janeiro, where a group of smugglers sells oxygen canisters sealed in surgical steel, marked with expiration dates and QR codes. Buyers are required to wear necklaces that feed the canisters directly into nasal valves. Some fake the codes. Others inject themselves with stolen anti-rejection drugs to qualify for dome access. A girl offers you one canister for your boots. Another offers hers for just a moment to breathe without pain. You cannot look her in the eyes. The poor form underground nations. Tunnels in Berlin, Mumbai, and Cairo become self-governed microstates. They trade in algae tanks, carbon scrubbers, and sacrificial lung chambers, rooms where infected air is drawn and trapped by human filters who volunteer to breathe their last for the sake of others. The air down here is warmer, but barely breathable. Still, it is better than the surface. Back above, the elite redesign warfare. In Paris, a private army deploys drones that carry air-piercing sonic cannons, intended to destabilize airborne cancer proteins through ultrasonic vibration. It fails. The drones are repurposed into flying border enforcers, spraying anyone who approaches the perimeter with a paralyzing gas that seals the lungs to prevent breath and spread. By month 6, the world map is no longer shaped by nations, but by air corridors, regions of controlled atmospheric flow, governed not by borders, but by filtration coverage. Those with machines rule, those without perish. Refugees now carry air passports, biodigital documents that track their oxygen exposure, lung scans, and mutation risk. Entry into safe zones requires a scan at the gate. Most are denied. You witness one such denial in Istanbul. A woman in her 60s is turned away for showing minor tracheal thickening on a chest scan. She collapses at the checkpoint. Her son, in fury, detonates an oxygen tank in protest. The explosion kills 5. The checkpoint is sealed. The crowd behind them suffocates in the smoke. No one is let through. And still, the disease adapts. A leaked report from Zurich describes a horrifying trend. Even within sealed domes, tumors are appearing. It is not due to breach, but mutation. The protein now replicates in trace amounts of oxygen. It is slower, subtler, but still lethal. People once thought safe are no longer immune. Paranoia sets in. Dome residents are scanned hourly. Those found positive are exiled, walked to the gates, and told to go. They are not executed. They are left to breathe freely, just once, before collapsing. You follow a convoy in Iceland, one of the last countries to attempt open-air survival through geothermal ventilation systems. It works for a time, but then the wind shifts. Within 72 hours, the island sees a 30% death rate. Their geothermal towers are converted into cremation columns. The smoke rises, rich with carbon and regret. The final broadcast from the World Air Commission plays only once. A pre-recorded message of apology, admission of failure, and a soft plea. Preserve the air if you can. Even in silence, we were trying. It ends with the sound of static, and then nothing. But the worst is not the collapse of nations or the burning of cities. The worst is still to come as the disease evolves again and the world begins to fall apart, person by person, cell by cell, in real time. You are standing in the heart of Berlin's Tiergarten when it happens, the first collapse of the second wave. It is mid-afternoon, and the air carries the heavy, sour perfume of dying flora. The city had tried to reopen parks, allow short walks for dome dwellers, grant a reprieve from the filtered indoors. People gather, cautiously, wearing their nasal cannulas and lightweight filtration veils. Children run in slow circles, watched by armed guards, monitored by drones. Then a scream tears the peace apart. A woman drops to her knees by the fountain. Her mouth opens in a silent gasp. At first, it looks like she is choking. Then her throat visibly bulges. Not with breath, not with coughing, but with growth. Beneath her skin, something shifts. A tumor pushes from behind her eye socket. Blood leaks from her nose. Within seconds, her body spasms and she falls forward, convulsing in the grass. As security moves in, 3 more people collapse nearby. 1 child, 1 guard, 1 elderly man who hadn't moved at all. This time, it is not spread over hours or even minutes. It is happening in seconds. The second wave has begun. Back at the Global Monitoring Station beneath Geneva Dome, scientists gather in a sealed observation chamber, watching footage from 30 separate cities. The phenomenon is identical. Victims collapse mid-sentence, mid-breath, their organs overtaken by instant tumor formation. Internal structures rupture. Bones crack beneath spontaneous biological overgrowth. The disease, it seems, is no longer subtle. It no longer waits inside your lungs, or blood, or lymph nodes. It now acts as soon as it enters the body, and it has learned to move faster. One researcher labels it Phase 2 compression. The latency period has disappeared. From exposure to full system failure, the time frame is now often less than 90 seconds. You travel to Lagos to observe the outbreak in real time. The government has abandoned air filtration attempts, instead opting to issue warnings and create breathing corridors. But in the narrow streets, filtration means little now. You watch as people fall where they stand. One man clutches his chest and tears open his shirt as tumors crawl beneath the skin like rising worms. A woman screams as her hands swell grotesquely, her fingers thickening with bone tumors in real time. An entire market collapses in 8 minutes. The air is no longer air. It is a killing field. Hospitals, already empty of medicine, now empty of people. No one dares enter. No one believes they can help. What can be done when death is instantaneous? What is the role of a doctor in a world where illness kills faster than the scalpel can cut? In Cairo, you witness the emergence of a terrifying new symptom, external tumoral projection. Victims not only die, but their bodies expand grotesquely, erupting in uncontrolled tissue growth that bursts from the mouth, nose, and eyes. Bodies no longer resemble bodies. They become mounds of flesh, gelatinous and hot, as if the human form itself is liquefying into biomass. Some collapse into piles within seconds, unrecognizable, horrifying. This is no longer just a disease. It is a biological detonation. Experts you consult theorize that the P41 protein has adapted to overcome remaining environmental resistances. Filters no longer block it completely. It passes through sterilized membranes. It bypasses gene therapy blockers. Some even believe it has developed a primitive form of intelligence, not in the way we understand consciousness, but in its response patterns. It moves around resistance zones. It targets dense population pockets. It adapts more rapidly than anything previously seen in natural or engineered evolution. Worse, it may now be replicating not only within the body, but outside it. You witness this firsthand in Vancouver, where a corpse left in open air begins to emit steam. Not heat, but microscopic aerosolized cells, still alive, still contagious. A single decomposing body becomes a new infection vector. Not unlike a bomb, cremation becomes mandatory, and yet even fire is sometimes not enough. Black clouds rise from the burn sites. Scientists scan them. They find live P41 particles in the smoke. The disease has conquered the last barriers. It survives in air, in ash, in water droplets, in dust. The second wave is not a resurgence. It is the final act. Some try to fight it with violence. Militias storm air dome control centers, destroying filtration nodes out of fury or desperation. If we cannot live, neither will you, becomes the motto of the dying. Safe zones fall from within. Mutations erupt among guards, engineers, children. Oxygen levels drop. Panic spreads faster than the disease. You watch one city turn on itself, citizens lighting fires to try to sterilize the atmosphere. They only succeed in blanketing themselves in carbon-dense clouds, choking the very lungs they were trying to save. Others turn to false hope. In Seoul, you infiltrate a cult gathering that believes the tumors are a sign of divine ascension. They inhale raw air deliberately, claiming it will awaken their spiritual DNA. They do not survive long. The building is sealed off, but not before one of them, a woman with a grotesquely swollen neck and pulsating veins, walks into a crowded district, touching people, whispering salvation. She collapses. 11 minutes later, over 900 die by the next sunrise. Religion, science, and governance all lose meaning in this wave. Even time becomes irrelevant. There is no incubation period to prepare for, no countdown to track. You are either breathing death now or about to. In the sealed observation compound in Antarctica, the last uninfected humans try to re-establish communications with fallen cities. Most signals return static. When they manage to contact a team in Iceland, the response is chilling. The Icelandic team begins speaking gibberish mid-conversation. They cry, laugh, chant, and then silence. When a rescue drone is dispatched, it finds only empty suits and piles of decaying flesh. The atmosphere around them, heavy with trace P for one. The mutation has one final trick. It now affects neurological tissue. Victims experience vivid hallucinations in their final moments. Some laugh uncontrollably. Others sing. Some beg to become one with the breathing god. It is as if the disease is not content with killing the body. It wants to rewrite the mind before ending it. You do not need to be told what this means. You feel it already. You have spent too long in the open. Your breath is heavier now. Your throat tickles when you swallow. You check your vitals. Heart rate elevated. Oxygen saturation falling. Cellular density in your bronchi rising. You are no longer observing. You are participating. You retreat toward the nearest surviving filtration gate in the Andes, but the roads are blocked. Fires light the hills. Migrants in tattered suits scream for oxygen. They fight over broken filter masks, biting each other, clawing at each other's throats in the hopes that they can extract a single clean breath from the last. Moments of someone else's life, you step over them, numb, knowing that there is no escape anymore. The second wave is not something that can be outrun. It is not coming. It is already here, and it does not want to kill you quickly. It wants you to feel every cell in your body betray you, every breath become a mistake, every second stretch into agony, because this is not a plague. This is the atmosphere choosing a new form. But what happens when the next generation is born into this nightmare? The world now belongs to the children of disease, those who have never breathed clean air and never will. You arrive at the edge of a settlement deep in the ruins of what was once Vancouver, now renamed by its inhabitants as Vale Point. The streets are silent. The buildings are hollow. Plastic sheeting flaps against crumbling door frames. Overhead, the sky is a colorless dome, choked in permanent haze. But in the center of the silence, life moves, small, careful, calculated. Children, dozens of them, no older than 12, sprint across a cracked courtyard in silent formation. Each wears a makeshift air hood strapped tight around their head, connected by umbilical tubes to recycled tanks strapped across their spines. They run not for fun, not for sport, but as part of a daily drill, learning how to navigate contaminated terrain, how to detect signs of mutation, how to hold their breath for 90 seconds, then switch tanks mid-run without stopping. It is all they have ever known. These are the children of the fog, the first generation born after the air turned against humanity. Their parents were the desperate few who gave birth in oxygen domes, underground chambers, or sealed bunkers. Their gestation was monitored minute by minute. Their lungs were trained with artificial breathers. Their immune systems are fortified with synthetic enzyme cocktails administered weekly, and yet they are still not safe. You walk among them, wearing your filtered suit. They do not speak to you. They do not speak at all. Speech is considered a risk. Every syllable a potential breach in the seal. These children communicate through gestures, eye movements, and a complex system of blinking and hand signals. Silence has become their native language. They do not cry, laugh, or shout. Their games are mute. Their emotions are buried. In a repurposed library turned survival academy, you observe their schooling. Lessons are not in math or literature, but in tumor recognition, evacuation, timing, blood oxygen level interpretation, and body mapping. Each child carries a wristband that flashes color codes corresponding to their internal readings. Green is safe. Yellow is early stage exposure. Red is full infiltration. The children glance at their bands like you once glanced at your phone for the time. One child's band flashes red during a hydration session. Within 30 seconds, 2 guards remove him from the room. No one reacts. The seat is left empty. The lesson continues. They have been taught not to grieve. Grief takes oxygen. Grief clouds judgment. Grief is inefficient. And yet, you can see the toll etched into their tiny eyes. Their faces do not carry the softness of innocence. They are drawn, hollow, disciplined. Their bodies are lean, borderline malnourished, but powerful from adaptation. Some of them are showing early signs of morphological shifts. Thicker tracheal walls, more efficient alveoli, even higher tolerance for carbon dioxide. A handful can hold their breath for more than 6 minutes. One girl has developed minor resistance to filtered exposure. The elders call her the breathless. She is 11. But resistance is not immunity. No one is immune. Even these children fall. In one observation pod, a 5-year-old girl begins to cry from a panic episode during airlock training. Her sobs fog the inner seal of her helmet. Condensation builds. A single breath leaks through a faulty valve. Within 3 minutes, she clutches her throat and begins to shake. The instructor gently places a blanket over her. She is carried to the quiet room. Her belongings are incinerated. The children of the fog do not ask where she went. They do not need to. You travel to another enclave near the base of Mount Kenya, where similar children undergo a different experiment. Here, bioengineers are trying to blend synthetic DNA into newborns to preemptively block cellular mutation. The success rate is low. Out of every 10 births, 7 result in immediate abnormal growths. Of the 3 that survive, to develop neurological instabilities, speech loss, motor degradation, uncontrollable spasms. But one child, just one, displays a miraculous trait. 0 mutation under controlled P41 exposure. The test is repeated 5 times. The result is the same. The child is labeled proof of concept. The community divides instantly. Some demand she'll be kept in isolation and studied for the rest of her life. Others demand she'll be euthanized, believing she carries a new mutation that may reverse or destabilize their entire genetic model. The child herself is unaware of her importance. She plays with a broken doll in a sealed chamber, unaware of the politics that swirl beyond the glass. Later that night, you speak with a woman named Amahal, a caretaker who lost both her children to exposure before joining this settlement. She tells you something that stays with you. These children are not survivors. They are the next version of us, and we will not recognize them when they grow up. You begin to notice what she means. These children do not look at the sky with wonder. They do not dream of the sea or of open fields. They do not miss the old world. They have never known it. Their mythology is built around masks, tanks, airlocks, silence. They believe in purification, not salvation. They have no gods, no bedtime stories, only rules. They do not believe the air will ever be safe again. And in their world, kindness is often seen as weakness. In one dome, you observe a group of children during a mutation alarm. One boy stumbles while replacing his tank. Another reaches out to help him. Both are quarantined. One survives, one does not. The survivor is later punished for attempting unauthorized contact. He is given 3 days in silence, isolation. When he returns, he does not make eye contact with anyone. He walks alone. You return to Vale Point weeks later. Half the children are gone. A new wave swept through their filtration system during a storm. No one knows if the system failed or if the cancer mutated again. The oldest child remaining is 8. The youngest is 2. They do not play anymore. They sit still. They watch you. One reaches for your glove. You do not move. She presses her tiny fingers against your suit, watching her reflection ripple in the surface. She whispers a soundless word you cannot hear and then walks away. You finally understand. These are not children anymore. They are precursors. The next generation will not grow up dreaming of open air or freedom. They will grow into a world where survival is tied to silence and love is dangerous. They will never kiss, never sing, never shout in joy. Their legacy will not be memories of what humanity once was, but training manuals for what humanity has become. And perhaps one day they will forget that breathing was ever something you could do without fear. But what happens when the world above can no longer sustain even these silent survivors? When civilization collapses, not just physically, but culturally. When every breath becomes a toll you must pay to continue. Next, we descend into the last attempt to organize a planet where clean air is currency and silence is law. The cities are no longer cities. They are mausoleums of movement, silent cathedrals of filtered air and unspoken rules. You return to what was once New York City, now a vertical fortress known simply as Vault 1. Entry is by retina scan, genetic clearance, and sterilization mist. Instead, everything hums in subdued harmony. It is a society built around one simple principle: conserve the breath. People live in oxygen-zoned tiers. The higher your zone, the more oxygen minutes you are allowed each day. In the lower tiers, where the poor and barely fit reside, oxygen is rationed to 30-minute intervals. Everything else is automated. Feeding tubes deliver nutrient gels. Waste is processed through sealed hygiene suits. A single, unauthorized vocalization in a loxygen zone results in penalty fines, social downgrading, or exile to the outer levels, known unofficially as the suffocation strip. You witness a woman, perhaps mid-30s, attempting to sing to her child in Zone 4, a soft lullaby, barely audible. Within seconds, alarms flash and a drone descends from the ceiling. A warning is given via visual display. She tries to cover her mouth, tears pooling in her eyes, but her action is already recorded. Later, you see her name removed from the central registry. Breath is now economy. It is no longer a right. Each citizen is assigned a quota tracked by internal biometrics. Breathing beyond your limit triggers alerts to centralized command hubs. In the upper zones, the elite enjoy free breathing hours, where they can talk, laugh, or even sing within sealed lounges. These moments are cherished as ancient luxuries, remembered and repeated like holidays. One executive hosts a weekly breath ball, where attendees pay fortunes to dance without masks inside a controlled dome for 20 minutes. Below, the average worker endures 16-hour shifts of silent labor inside hydroponic towers and filtration farms. Machines filter the outside air through miles of algae, tubing, and charcoal composites. The workers monitor growth, maintain temperature, and scrub chambers all without speaking, without coughing, without faltering. In this world, even a sneeze is a liability. Cultural institutions have either collapsed or mutated. There are no theaters, no concerts. The global music industry has been replaced with silent symphonies, digitally transmitted brainwave compositions that induce simulated sound in listeners through neural stimulation. The last great poet alive, Idris Nur, has not spoken a word in 12 years. His work is composed entirely of breathing patterns encoded into light sequences. Religious institutions evolve in unexpected ways. Churches, temples, and mosques are converted into air sanctums, places where the desperate come not to pray for forgiveness, but for air. In one cathedral, you observe parishioners kneeling beneath vertical filters, mouths open, eyes closed, absorbing filtered oxygen like sacrament. Some believe breath itself is holy. Others whisper that cancer was God's final punishment for human pride. Education systems are digitized and fully remote. Children are raised in pods until age 12, isolated from society, trained in filtration, maintenance, emergency response, and genetic self-monitoring. Emotional development is stunted. Teachers appear as avatars in ocular projections, never in person. The only time children gather in groups is for breath control drills and mutation screenings. Games and imagination are discouraged. They waste oxygen. Critical thinking is replaced by compliance. Every aspect of civilization is reduced to efficiency. Even death is managed by the new Bureau of Inhalation Expiry, an international organization that oversees oxygen expiration events. When someone's oxygen score dips too low, or their body shows early tumor signs, they are expected to report to the farewell floor. Massive euthanasia halls where filtered rooms allow the dying of final, unrestricted breath before unconsciousness. Some go peacefully, others do not. A select few attempt to run, but running raises your breath rate, and in this world, that is a death sentence in itself. The architecture has changed too. No longer built for comfort or expression, cities are constructed vertically with narrow oxygen shafts instead of open spaces. Buildings are not heated or cooled by air anymore, but by sealed thermal panels. There are no open windows, no balconies, no trees. Even artificial parks are enclosed behind glass domes, where simulated breezes replace wind. The concept of the outdoors is now academic, found only in books or 3D archives. Language has changed. Words like sigh, sing, shout, and gasp have disappeared from daily use. Romance is conducted through visual bonding, not speech. Marriage ceremonies are conducted via synchronized breath-sharing rituals in filtered chambers, monitored by atmospheric purity monitors. Kisses are rare, symbolic, dangerous. Most couples express intimacy by holding hands and sharing a single oxygen valve during their bonding sessions. You visit one of the final functioning underground cities in Norway, where a resistance movement has created an alternative society called the Still. Here, breath is sacred. Each citizen is trained in advanced breath conservation from birth. Conversations are held once per month in sealed halls with maximum emotional control. The children here grow up believing that speaking is not only dangerous, but vulgar. Language itself is considered outdated. And yet, despite the sterilization, despite the fear, a new kind of culture forms, one built on precision, on quiet, on survival. Humans have found a way to continue, even as everything that once defined humanity, laughter, music, storytelling, argument, love, has been reduced to monitored respiration. You witness one small act of rebellion in a forgotten corridor beneath Seoul. A group of teenagers gathers in a sealed maintenance tunnel. They sit in a circle, wearing cracked helmets, and one by one remove their masks for seconds at a time. They take a breath, then whisper a single word into the air: freedom, sky, mother, voice. Their lungs begin to tighten, but they smile, because even here, in the age of breathless civilization, the last act of defiance is the human voice. Yet soon, even filtered sanctuaries and whispered memories will fall. The clean zones are dwindling, and those who remain are clinging to the last untainted spaces on Earth. By the time you reach the last fragments of habitable Earth, it is no longer about survival. It is about preservation of DNA, of culture, of memory. But even these enclaves are cracking. You arrive by subterranean shuttle at Dome 23B, perched atop what was once the northern edge of Greenland. The airlock seals behind you with a hiss, a thick chemical mist blasting your suit before a voice instructs you, silently, via retino-projected text. Do not exhale until advised. Inside, The temperature is held at a perfect 19 degrees Celsius. The air feels unreal. This is one of only 7 remaining clean zones recognized by the World Preservation Consortium, each housing fewer than 2,000 individuals. Entry into such zones is no longer merit-based, but genetics-based. Residents are screened for trace mutations, oxygen efficiency, and psychological profile. Every movement is tracked. Every breath is logged. Life here is not about freedom. It is about order. The clean zone resembles a laboratory more than a home. White walls, fluorescent ceilings, perfect silence. Every resident moves with slow, measured steps, not out of fear, but out of routine. Children are taught to breathe rhythmically, to reduce CO output. Adults wear biometric harnesses that alert them if their oxygen intake exceeds quota. One woman is escorted to a stasis chamber after laughing at a private joke. Her biometric spike triggered an emotional hazard alert. You walk through rows of nutrient farms, air scrub towers, DNA storage chambers, and medical labs. In one room, 10 engineers are trying to recreate natural wind, a phenomenon that none of them has ever actually experienced. They feed coded air currents through sensory tunnels and adjust airflow according to ancient climate data. But it is not the same. It never will be. You realize the people here are not trying to live. They are trying to replicate what living once meant. Far below, in the lowest levels, you're taken to the vault, a sealed archive containing the last viable genetic records of humanity. They lie frozen in crystal cylinders, marked with names of forgotten lineages: Mayanbi, Pashtunke, Zulu A9, Navajo Epsilon. The goal is not to survive the present. It is to reboot the species, should the atmosphere ever become clean again. But faith is fading. One vanished in the Himalayas, its communications cut mid-transmission. Another fell silent in the Pacific after a containment breach during a supply transfer. The zones that remain know they are next. Tensions rise. In Dome 23B, paranoia becomes policy. New security measures are implemented. Daily air audits, random decontamination drills, genetic revaluations. Residents are ranked by purity, and those deemed at risk are slowly removed under cover of night. You follow one such case, an elderly man who once worked on the dome's atmospheric core. His recent scans show a 2% elevation in cellular turnover. The committee votes to have him transferred to the outer recovery station. You later discover the recovery station is simply a sealed corridor with no exit. The clean zones begin turning on themselves. Alliances between domes fray. The consortium dissolves, its leaders disappearing into private sectors or locked cryovaults. Without central governance, each dome becomes a fiefdom of its own ideology. One begins experimenting with artificial lungs grown in suspension. Another switches to a caste system based on oxygen consumption efficiency. A third collapses entirely when an internal protest leads to sabotage of its main air scrubber. The explosion kills 600 instantly. The survivors are never found. You travel to Dome 6, hidden in the Andes, rumored to be the last bastion of unmodified life. Here, a small population lives in minimalist harmony, practicing absolute silence, zero emotional expression, and extreme breath control. Some have trained their metabolisms to function on 25% less oxygen than average. They claim this is the future of humanity, that adaptation, not preservation, is the key. But as you spend time there, you notice subtle signs of decay. dizziness among youth, increased fainting episodes, unexplained lesions. The air is still clean, but the people are not. From your remote terminal, you monitor a final emergency signal from the Arctic Biosphere Initiative. Their dome has been compromised, not from outside contamination, but from internal mutation. A child born within their clean wombs, fourth-generation dome-born, exhibits spontaneous tumoral growth despite never being exposed to the outer world. P41, it seems, has found a way to embed itself in human DNA. It no longer needs to travel through air. The final clean zones are not clean. They are slow-motion extinction chambers. At last, you visit Dome 1, the orbital sanctuary, Earth's only airborne clean zone, a converted space station launched 2 years into the outbreak. There, floating above the poisoned clouds, the last untouched air remains. But even here, the end is coming. Supplies are limited. Psychological collapse is rampant. Communications from the surface are nearly non-existent. The crew has stopped rotating shifts, many choosing cryogenic stasis in the hopes of waking up to a better world. The captain, once a stern leader, now sits for hours watching old Earth videos, lakes, forests, crowds, laughter, things that will never exist again. You stand at the window and look down on the planet. It is quiet, blue, and deceptively peaceful. But you know the truth. The clouds are not clouds. They are carriers. The forests are dying. The cities are empty. The seas are still rising. But no one is left to care. And soon, even the illusion of safety will vanish. But when hope fails and the world turns inward, people will cling to anything, medicine, myth, or madness. And some will offer cures that are far worse than the disease itself. You land in what remains of Prague, a city once revered for its knowledge and precision, now reduced to a theater of illusions. Hope has become currency here, sold in syringes, chants, and bottled air. The people walk in a daze, masks cracked, eyes sunken, clutching vials of chemicals they believe will save them. No one asks for proof anymore. They only ask, will it stop the growth? In a gutted museum-turned-marketplace, lines stretch through the rubble. A merchant in a blood-smeared lab coat promises injections of Curex-11, a substance allegedly reverse-engineered from cancer-resistant shark DNA. He shows laminated testimonials and a crude banner, "Live clean, die never." You watch as he administers shots into trembling arms. Some of the customers drop to the ground immediately. Others walk away, swearing they feel better, but they do not. Their eyes already show the signs: hemorrhaging in the sclera, cell stress in the cheeks. The tumors are simply waiting. From city to city, the promises multiply. In Cairo, a priest sells a miracle mask dipped in blessed silver and wolf's blood. In Seoul, an underground group performs ritual drownings, claiming brief death can confuse the airborne cancer's cellular imprint. In New York, one of the few functioning data servers runs an AI-generated prayer loop said to vibrate at a frequency that neutralizes P41 particles. Millions subscribe. Thousands die, whispering its rhythm. You follow a woman named Liana, a former epidemiologist who now leads an outlaw commune in what was once the Italian Alps. She claims to have cured herself using a technique of induced hibernation and radical DNA restructuring. Her body shows no visible mutations. She breathes unaided for short periods. She speaks without fear. Her followers kneel around her, mimicking her breath patterns and daily rituals. She promises she will soon share her serum with the world. Then, one morning, she collapses during a ceremony. When her body is cut open by desperate believers, they find her lungs consumed with a dense, crystalline tumor web. She had not been immune. She had been slowly dying, slower than most, and she used her final months to feed a movement built on a lie. Still, they continue chanting her name. In Argentina, a biotech startup known as Venturi Labs claims to have created an oxygen vaccine. They deploy glossy ads via drones, featuring smiling children and glowing lungs. You visit one of their distribution hubs. For a price, citizens are implanted with a microfilter in their pulmonary tract, said to block 99.9% of airborne pathogens. The early trials seem promising. Patients breathe more easily, tumors slow. But weeks later, every single test subject dies the same way: spontaneous, full-body cellular collapse. Their systems overwhelmed by trapped mutagens that couldn't escape the artificial filter. The solution had become a prison. But it is not just fake science that spreads. It is belief. A new global religion rises, known as the Breathless Path. Its teachings are simple. Cancer is not a disease. It is transformation. Humanity was meant to evolve, to become more than flesh, and the airborne mutation is the hand of divine intervention. Their temples are sealed caverns where breath is restricted as a form of meditation. Followers inject themselves with diluted samples of P41 to accelerate ascension. You infiltrate one of their you see bodies curled in the corners, tumor-riddled but smiling, whispering to themselves in languages they never learned. Some speak of visions, of wings, of infinite lungs, of a sky that sings. They die shortly after, and yet others take their place. In the remains of Tokyo, a black market genius known only as Kaze claims to have synthesized a strain of the airborne cancer that devours itself, a cancer that kills cancer. He distributes it via engineered microdrones that release tiny bursts over populated shelters. At first, people show signs of relief. Tumors slow. Blood becomes clearer. Breathing stabilizes. Hope ignites. But after 2 weeks, their bodies begin to break down at the skeletal level. The new strain had not targeted P41. It had simply consumed whatever cells it could find. Starting with the immune system, they begin to melt from the inside. Cause is never found again. You witness a final attempt in Oslo, where a team of scientists and philosophers collaborate on a project called Project Eden. The idea is not to cure the disease, but to move humanity underground permanently. They plan to build self-contained subterranean cities that never connect to the surface, controlled genetics, eternal air recycling, emotion inhibitors. The first model is successful for a year. Then a child is born. He cries during birth, and within 3 hours, everyone in the compound is dead. The scientists conclude that sound, or perhaps emotion, is triggering new mutations in P41. The project is shut down, the entrance sealed. Your travels take you to what was once Jerusalem. A gathering of survivors has turned the Western Wall into a monument of lungs. They hang sculptures, paintings, even full-sized mannequins, with visible airways carved into their chests. People come to kneel, not to pray, but to exhale their final breath, to donate their air to something they still believe matters. And yet, among all this madness, a few remain sane. a hidden enclave in Canada, small, silent, scientific, runs quiet tests on a theory that P41 can only survive because human respiration patterns feed it. They train volunteers to enter a state of suspended breath where heart rate, cell oxygenation, and temperature drop to near-death levels. You witness one subject survive 24 hours in open air, but he does not wake again. It worked, but it also erased him. Survival, it seems, now requires the absence of life itself. And still, people refuse to surrender. In every corner of the world, there is someone offering a miracle, a cure, a way back. People are drinking bleach again, eating ash, inhaling smoke from rare woods, hooking themselves up to aquarium filters. Belief has replaced biology. Desperation has replaced reason. You stand on the outskirts of Istanbul, where a man has painted the words, "Clean air is in you," on a ruined tower. He claims to be a prophet. He breathes openly, proudly. He says the air bends to his will. You scan his lungs. They are empty. His tissue is dead. He is not breathing air. He is breathing belief, and it is killing him. But belief cannot stop entropy. And soon, when all faith is burned away, all cures exposed as fraud, all domes breached and enclaves gone, the only thing left will be silence. And in that silence, the world will take its final breath. You return to Earth's final days, not as a witness, but as a relic. The sky has turned sepia, thick clouds smeared with the oily residue of airborne protein and soot. There is no wind, no birds, no sounds, only the gentle hiss of ash falling like snow. Cities lie hollow, overgrown with cancerous vines birthed from the flesh of the dead, their roots winding through asphalt, concrete, and bone. Humanity is gone in all but memory. You step through the ruins of what was once Johannesburg. The buildings are hollow husks, windows long shattered, interiors coated with the dusty flakes of long-dead tissue. The roads are rivers of silence. On a park bench, a child's shoe lies beside a skeletal foot, the rest of the body melted into the seat like wax. Across from it, a mural still clings to a wall, painted hands reaching for the sky. You exhale inside your suit and watch your breath fog against the cracked visor. The condensation is the only thing still alive here. The clean zones are no longer broadcasting. One by one, they fell into static, their systems overloaded by internal mutation, sabotage, or power collapse. Some went quietly, others lit up the sky in flames, choosing annihilation over suffocation. The orbital station was the last to go. Its final message played across the remaining receivers in bursts of flickering signal. We did everything we could. We preserved, we studied, we hoped. But the sky is no longer ours. Now the earth is still. There are no voices, no cries. Not even insects or bacteria thrive anymore. The air has become not just hostile, but inert, saturated with the remnants of billions of decaying cells, each one still releasing particles of P41. Every molecule of oxygen is laced with extinction, and the few humans who remain, if any do, hide in silence, praying without gods, gasping without breath. You find one, a man, gaunt and alone, in the lower levels of an abandoned train station in Kyoto. His hair is patchy, his skin translucent, his breath shallow. He has sealed himself in a chamber of carbon tiles and repurposed air scrubbers. He calls it the cradle. His voice is hoarse when he speaks, cracked from years of disuse. How many of us are left, he asks. You say nothing. You simply lower your scanner. He reads the display. The number blinks once. 1. He laughs, the sound brittle and final. Then, I guess, it's me. But it is not. Because behind a broken console, buried in stacks of journals and plastic oxygen tubes, lies a small device. It is blinking, recording. He hands it to you, fingers shaking. It has everything, he whispers. My breath, my voice, the stories. Upload it. Let them know. You take it and upload the data to your vault, locked inside the final quantum archive, orbiting the Earth. The man's head tilts back. He breathes in deep. Then he stops. You do not scan him. You already know. You travel north, to where the sky still burns with the faintest hue of ozone. There, hidden in a mountain crevasse, is the Echo Vault, a capsule project designed to survive 10,000 years. Inside are air samples, DNA fragments, seeds, texts, stories, and the final sound ever recorded on Earth, a child laughing. You upload your records. You leave your suit behind. You sit in the center of the archive chamber and begin speaking, not loudly, not triumphantly, but calmly. You tell the story, from the first cough to the final collapse, from the illusion of safety to the betrayal of breath. Your voice fills the chamber, absorbed by sensors, translated into 1,000 formats and frequencies, not for the living, but for whatever comes next. You finish, and then, for the first time, you remove your mask. The air tastes like rust and mold and electricity. It crawls into your lungs like worms. You feel your throat constrict, your chest bloom with fire, your eyes blur, but you do not scream. You close your eyes. You let go. The Earth is quiet again. For centuries, the wind scours the bones of cities, carrying the whispers of a species that breathed itself into oblivion. The oceans rise, the forests decay, the machines fall silent. Nothing moves, nothing speaks. But beneath the soil, in sealed caverns of light and code, the last memory of humanity waits, not for salvation, not for resurrection, but to be known. Because in the end, we were not undone by war or greed or fire. We were undone by breath, and that breath was the last thing we ever shared. Now that you have seen the last breath of mankind, one final question remains. What can you do, if anything, when the air you trust is the very thing that kills you? You traveled across time to witness the final undoing of a species. You stood in cities where voices once echoed between skyscrapers and markets pulsed with human breath. You entered sanctuaries where the air was rationed like gold, and every exhale was a calculated risk. You watched children learn to live without sound, without dreams, without futures. You saw faith collapse beneath the weight of tumors, and science crumble in the face of something it could not fight. You bore witness to the death of communication, of culture, of community, not through flame or flood, but through the soft, quiet act of inhalation. What destroyed us was not hatred or war. It was not a weapon dropped from the sky or a virus spread through conflict. It was trust. Trust in the air, in the invisible, in the breath we all assumed was ours by birthright. We spent centuries fighting over land and gods and borders. And yet the one thing we all shared without question, the air itself, was what betrayed us in the end. And when it turned, we had no language left to scream. We built domes and walls, tried to control the wind, tried to filter, isolate, escape. But the air was everywhere, and it never stopped coming. In the final moments, there were no more cures, no more masks, no more plans. There was only the sound of lungs collapsing and memories fading. We forgot how to speak, how to sing, how to breathe together. And when it ended not with an explosion, not with a scream, but with a whisper, the sound of a final breath released into a world that could no longer carry it. You came here hoping to understand why humanity did not survive. But maybe the answer is simpler than you expected. We did not survive because we did not know how to stop breathing. Because even when the air became poison, we still longed for it. We could not surrender what made us human, and in the end, that was our undoing. If this story made you feel something, curiosity, fear, reflection, then share it. Share it not because it is real, but because it could be. In a world where the smallest changes ripple into extinction, sometimes all it takes to shift the future is awareness. Leave a comment with your thoughts. What would you do if the air turned against you? How would you adapt? What would you refuse to let go of? Subscribe if you want more journeys like this through alternate timelines, terrifying futures, and the deepest what-ifs humanity dares to imagine. Because the air may not have betrayed us yet, but the questions are already in the wind. And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us ask the right questions, we'll never have to find out what the last breath of humanity really sounds like.